guys, that's an awesome movie. Oh my God. Let's give another round of applause for Logan Noir, the debut, the only screening of Logan Noir in theaters. I want to say hello to a few people. I want to say hello to Brooklyn, where I am. Thank you guys for coming out. I want to say hello, yes. I want to say hello to the theaters around the country, some 30 theaters that are watching us live. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a lot of fun. I want to say hello to the Facebook audience that are watching. You guys didn't get a chance to watch Logan Noir, but the good news is there are many ways to watch Logan, this amazing movie. As of today, you can download it digitally via iTunes and other purveyors of that sort. And next week, May 23rd, you can get Logan on DVD in 4K and Blu-ray. And the cool thing about that presentation is you're going to get both the theatrical original version and you're going to be able to see Logan Noir as we just saw it. And I think we can all attest to the fact that that is the way to do it because it's a very cool alternate presentation of this film and works very, very well. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be joined in just a moment. As you can see, there are three conspicuous empty chairs next to me. Hutch Parker, the producer, James Mangold, the writer-director, who brilliantly has directed 2 of these fantastic Wolverine films. And of course, Hugh Jackman is going to join me in just a second. I want to mention a couple things. Spread the good word about this event and about Logan. Use the hashtag Logan Noir. Ask your questions, not you guys in the theater because you're right here already. But if you're watching at home on Facebook, ask your questions using the hashtag AskAlamo. I'm going to ask some of your questions as well. And I guess enough of me rambling, right, guys? Do you want to hear from the guys that are here? Okay, cool. And just a reminder, stick around in your seats afterwards for those of you in theaters across the country and here. We've got a cool exclusive poster for you guys, so stick in your seats. I think they're going to bring them right to you. Without any further ado, let's get into some conversation about Logan and Logan Noir. Give it up for this amazing panel. Producer Hutch Parker. Yes. We'll bring them all out. Writer, director, James Mangold, and a man that we all know and love. There would be no Wolverine, no Logan without him, Mr. Hugh Jackman.
The claws are out, and the chops. I like it. That's familiar. Thank you.
We got some of the diehards. Some of the legit fans are here.
Awesome.
Congratulations again, guys.
Thank Josh.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate it.
So first up, I do want to ask a little bit about the presentation that this privileged audience got to see and in theaters around the country of Logan Noir. How did this idea happen? How did we get here? Was this something you always kind of intended to present in some form?
It was very much came from fans. Those of you who follow us on Twitter and whatever other social media might have gotten a lot of black and white photos that myself and some other photographers took during production. And early on, I started releasing some of the photos, and they were in black and white. And the fan response was huge. And I thought our lighting and Hugh and all the characters looked fabulous in black and white. And it just struck us that it first occurred to us that we should do it on home video and produce a black and white version. And then as we're working on it and it looked so good, we said, we want to see this on a big screen, and I think people might show up to see it. So, thank you. And you know, one of the biggest reasons to do it is because I think there's something changing out there. People are looking for things. There's a lot of film fans out there, and people are looking for things that connect to the past, things that look different, things that are new, but also old again. And I think that for a long time, studios have had an assumption that you guys need bright colors at all times to stay amused and loud sounds at all times to stay amused. And I don't think that's true. I think audiences are getting more sophisticated and more interested in seeing creativity explored all sorts of different ways. And if even just one night seeing this movie this way helps people see that there's audiences out there for a monochrome movie, for a different kind of movie in any way, that's great.
And I want to give a shout out to two people who are here standing at the back, Chris Aronson and Steve Asbell, names you may not have heard of, but people who are this, oh, yes. Your PR people are here, guys. But they're people from the studio, high up at the studio. But I think a lot of people assume, the studios are just very risk averse. But actually, the fostering of this idea really grew from seeds within, as Jim explained, from his photography. But it really took root with those two at the studio. So thank you, guys, because it wouldn't have happened without you.
Can you gentlemen let us in on kind of the initial conversations that led to the film we saw here and we saw released back in March, in terms of what were the first things that all three of you kind of wanted to see in this film, and were you kind of on the same page from the start, and how difficult was it to kind of get on the same page among the three and with the studio?
Yeah, I've come with a new formula. I've come to a new formula after 20 years in this business that it actually takes fewer people who fight harder to make a movie you're proud of. And so it did start, particularly Jim and I first, Hutch very, very soon after. Hutch and I worked together for 20 years, and but I knew I wouldn't have anything if Jim wasn't on board. And I think I said something, I'm trying to remember, but I might have mentioned The Wrestler. I think I mentioned...
we both, yeah, I think
when we were talking?
We were talking about The Wrestler, we were talking about Westerns, we were talking about... But the funny thing is, when you're talking about what we wanted, we both know what we didn't want. That was the first thing we both were coming from a pretty negative place of kind of going, we don't want to make another one of those movies, meaning just another one of the assembly line. Even though there's lots of people who show up for them, we wanted to make something more human, more different. I think you felt that's why examples like The Wrestler or movies like Unforgiven or, there were a lot of different movies in our heads, but they all were united by one thing. They were personal films, not corporate kind of Happy Meal moving movies. And that there was some level where we really didn't want to do that. We really wanted to do a film that somehow was a film first and happened to feature superheroes as opposed to being a superhero film. And that difference, whatever mentally it was, kind of informed everything we did and every decision we made, I think.
And I don't know, maybe this is something that you, for instance, Hutch, could like illuminate, but I'm curious. I mean, I think for context sake, we think about Deadpool now, like this R-rated film that made so much money and was so successful with critics and fans, but you guys were in development. This was going to be R before Deadpool came out. You didn't know there would be that audience. Was the studio always on board 110%? Was there a massive fight in any way on any of the story points that we eventually saw that landed on the big screen?
There really wasn't. The key catalyst in this, honestly, in my opinion, was Jim, because we had conversations in different iterations, and even going back long before the Wolverine, about more grounded storytelling within the universe. But candidly, I don't think we were equipped yet. And I'll say it on behalf of the studio and even the various people involved, and Jim was sort of a catalyst in so many different ways in galvanizing the studio's confidence about doing something bold, in the conviction that he had about the tone that it required, in the the kind of amazing instinct and navigational skill he had about where we needed to go with the story. He really was, in the best sense of what I think of as a filmmaker, was the captain of this journey. And that was obviously in conjunction with Hugh, unquestionably, and from the beginning. But for me, I don't think, I honestly, and this is, we often say this about actors, and it's certainly true of Hugh in this role, but I cannot picture another filmmaker doing anything even close to what was accomplished with this film, other than Jim, and that I think that's how significant change occurs in storytelling, in filmmaking, is when somebody comes along that has the combination of talent and passion and instinct and conviction and skill, and that's a rare thing. I'm describing a very small group of people. But it really is, it is.
And guts. No, I'm going to talk before you.
Go.
Well,
It seems like a good moment to let you guys talk.
And Guts, and I was so excited. This is my third film with Jim, and we always talked about doing stuff, but along for the 17 years that we worked together, but to have a blank canvas for Jim, I mean, unfortunately, you had to inherit an actor, but apart from that, it was a blank canvas in terms of script, of what we did with it, and we really were Steve Asbell and Emma Watts, and we had a meeting at a hotel in Los Angeles early on, and I thought that would be tough, that meeting, where I said to Jim, I said, I'm just going to go and have a meeting so that they know that I'm really in, and it's not just you, and not just you making... And that was about a 3-minute meeting. It was literally like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, no, I'm really serious. Like, this is what we want to make. Yeah, great, let's go.
We kept bracing for people to be opposed to us.
Yeah.
You know, and certain things conspired, I think, in our favor. One was Deadpool eventually came out and was a massive success, so that kind of defanged the fears about rated R quite as much. Also, we promised to make the movie for less money so that we could be rated R, so that helps.
That always helps.
But the last thing, you know, that I talked about when the movie came out, but I think is really interesting, is one of the main reasons I wanted it to be R wasn't per se blue language or violence, while all those things were in some ways, particularly the violence for this character, a value added for me in some ways. It was really because when you make a movie of this scale or with this kind of pressure on it, whether it's a smaller one or a bigger one, but still it's a summer movie, there's a lot of pressure on the movie in the marketplace. And if the movie's rated R, frankly, it gets graded on a curve. Not everyone can go. You know, it's just that simple now. Not every 14-year-old or 11-year-old or 6-year-old, God willing, is going to be being able to buy tickets to this movie. So that it reduces the box office. Okay, so that's a problem for the studio. That's why we made it cheaper. But it does something else. It suddenly means you're not making a movie for 6-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 11-year-olds. And the kind of story you can tell and the way you tell it, when you're not concerned with establishing cutesy sidekick characters that become something that they give away or someone makes action figures out of, or that you're not worried about the attention span of a 7-year-old and whether they're going to be looking up from their gummy bears or not, whether you're just telling a story for essentially grown-ups. You know, a huge part of the comic book world of the graphic novel is adults who read them, not children. And that at some point, the marketing skew when you make these movies all aimed at carrying really young children along, first of all, it produces movies that are frankly, even at PG-13, too violent for kids, in my opinion. But second of all, it also cheats grown-ups of having some part of their fantasy experience or their comic book experience honored with adult themes and ideas. And I think that by getting a rated R, it gave us a driver's license to make, I hope you agree, a more sophisticated movie, or a movie that even took its time sometimes with the characters as opposed to having to gun along so fast.
Yeah, well said, definitely.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we're all relieved that the audience was there and received it as well as they did. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the luxury of having a Q&A like this a couple months after it's been out, as we've all seen it, probably multiple times, so we can talk a little bit about the ending. Hugh, you've had a lot of time to kind of think about how you want it to go out. Specifically, I would think literally how the ending would look to you, like what your last moments on screen would be as this character. Did you have thoughts that you shared with James and Hutch in terms of what the final moments of Logan should be, what the last words should be? How did that? Were there alternates to that, sort of the last scenes of the film?
I'm going to be honest, I was a bit of a pain in the ass for Jim, and I was wrong 95% of the time, but which made it even more amazing. But there was a lot of things that I was like, Jim, no, and I would fight, okay, and he would listen to me, but listen, I think there. And when I saw the movie, it was a litany of, yeah, you were right, you were right, you were right, you were right. Even before that, obviously, while we were making it. But all I knew, actually, at the end, we were pretty open about whether it would be, you know, for Logan or not, because Unforgiven was a huge influence for me. And actually, the film is more devastating for me, the fact that he just rides out of town unforgiven and somehow damned in his heroism. And I thought it was such a beautiful, poetic finish. I said, whatever we finish with, it has to be earned and it has to feel in keeping. And so when we went into, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we decided whether he would die or not.
No, it was really not. It was about, I think, earning the right ending.
Yeah.
But I think we wanted it to feel over. meaning we wanted a sense of a curtain coming down at the end, not a kind of, I don't want to speak for you, but I certainly didn't want people speculating that we had left a hole open for more money making and bilking and doing. That I wanted it to be like the curtains come down. We told the story, and just like a regular movie, we're not leaving something out there. We're actually, the story's over.
But the highlight for me, and I'm saying this because so many people ask me who came up with that ending with the cross turning into the X. And that was Jim Mangold. And so he wrote it. And when I read it, I thought, oh, that's beautiful. It seemed very poetic on the page. But when I saw it, I cried. That's when I really... And I sat next to Patrick Stewart. We saw it for the first time, and both of us wept. And I was... Stephen Colbert, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but I just saw him the other night. He says, I've seen it 3 times in the theater, in the cinema, and I cried every single time at that final image. But there is something so patient and courageous as a filmmaker just to allow everything to culminate in that one moment. And it's a privilege to be under the ground while that movie happens, that moment happens.
I agree. I feel like you're out of the woods. You're like, okay, I made it without crying, and then it starts to tip over, and you're like, oh shit, here it comes. We've got some Twitter questions for you guys that have been submitting. Here's the first one, James. How many kids did you have to audition until you found Daphne? And Hugh, can you talk a little bit about what it was like working with her? This is from Laptop.
There were thousands of kids looked at around the world. I mean, we were very specific in the screenplay about what we needed, which was a Spanish-speaking young woman between 10 and 12. I didn't want her to be too old. I didn't want it to be kind of a CW, kind of post-pubescent, young, kind of new, whatever. I wanted a kid. I wanted to be a kid. Daphne, to be honest, I got this iPhone video of her from Madrid that her dad, who's a wonderful actor, and mom, who's a wonderful actor, had recorded with her doing these scenes. It's on the Blu-ray, you might see these scenes that have been on the internet now of her auditioning. This was before that. This was just something very raw, but also, like that, very magnificent. I just knew it was her. I mean, I remember pulling Hugh in and Hutch in and Patrick and everyone I could find and saying, this is the kid. She's amazing. And she had never been in anything before, and I think you'll agree with me. She is amazing. And anyway, please, what was it like working with her, Hugh?
She's astonishing. I mean, I have an 11-year-old daughter, so I was watching the two of them play on set, literally, sometimes looking like 7 or 8-year-olds, very sort of innocent and sweet, and then literally just whacking on the claws and slicing people in half. And she's so very normal and extraordinary at the same time, incredibly intense, loved the set, hated being dragged from set, wanted to work longer, was really wanted to watch and would listen, and but wouldn't just say yes to anything, right? She really had a kind of conviction within herself.
She's a real actress.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't want to be told, look here, smile here, blink here. She wanted to know she wanted me to describe what the scene was about or what would be the vibe in the scene. And she'd actually get disconcerted if you start just kind of giving her what I call results notes, like just do this, feel this, look at this. She was she's a real actress.
Super cool, very relaxed. Although when we were at the MTV Awards last Sunday, and she came up to me and she seemed very sort of, all of a sudden quite shy and a little starstruck. I said, you okay? And she goes, I really want a photo with Emma Watson. Can you get a photo with Emma Watson? And all of a sudden she turned into an 11-year-old. It was very sweet.
Is that the last we've seen of X-23? Have you talked to the studio? Is there potential more for Laura?
Anything's possible. I certainly have talked to them about it. I even talked to them about it before we made the movie. I thought she was just a great character. But with what Daphne did, I think certainly that's possible.
Tantalizing. Okay. Next question from our audience. Hugh, has there been anything you've been able to learn about yourself through growing with and playing the character of Logan over the years?
Yeah, this is my first film in America, so 17, 18 years ago, and I have learned so much and continue to learn. But in the end, I was left with this incredible feeling of confidence, I suppose, that if you are lucky enough to surround yourself with the right people, you can bring the best out in yourself. And one of the reasons I wanted Jim to direct me, first off, very selfishly, is he gets the best performances out of anybody. So when it came to the Wolverine, I was like, it was already my 8th or 7th movie or something. And I was like, I've got to dig deeper, and Jim was one of those people. I'd worked, we knew each other. He was also a writer and a developer. Hutch is the same. When you have people around you that are honest, that are not afraid to push you, but that underneath all that believe in you, then as an actor, you feel free. Because I used to find it, particularly when I began, a quite daunting thing. Weirdly, I was more at home on a stage than a sound stage. When the sound stage it felt very disjointed. And when I first began, and I realized I do love the feeling of theater, that feeling of family, where it's not perfect. People will argue, people will yell, but underneath there is a belief in each other that you will get the job done, and that you will be honest with each other when you're letting each other down. And that's what I've learned is the most important thing, to have that faith in the people around you. And I've been very, very lucky to have that.
Another question actually about the noir version we just saw for you, James. Is black and white now your preferred version? If so, we kind of addressed this a little bit. Was it ever discussed for the initial release?
I have to be honest and say, no, I made the movie as a color film, so I'd be kind of lying if I said that all that work out the window. I wanted to see the film as a black and white film, but if I were making a black and white film and saying its preferred version, we'd be planning it from the ground up in the very beginning, which in this world right now is highly unlikely, because it's very hard to get anybody to launch production, particularly on a mega budget black and white film that's never going to be color. I mean, the tricky thing is, in fact, you have the color, you'd have to, I have friends who have even made black and white films, and they still have to produce a color version just for some territories that absolutely refuse to distribute the black and white. So just the world marketplace of film kind of hasn't gotten evolved to that place yet. But I love this version of the movie. But it's like, it would be like picking among my children. And my production designer would literally faint if I said all the work he went to with color, and my DP and all of the work costume designer, the work we went to was out the window because I suddenly prefer this one to the other. Let's say I love all my children.
You finally got to do your black and white Western. You just kind of, it happened. Another question from the fans out there. Hugh, how emotional were you on your last day of shooting?
Yeah, it took me a bit by surprise. I think I remember that last day. It was sort of bits and piecey kind of day, as often happens. You know, I have a friend who always says, "Not with a bang, but a whimper." Often film is finished like that. You know, the end scenes were not the last scenes we shot, and I was so involved with these guys. Even when we shot, I knew we still had a long way to go. We finished last August, right? So we still had 7 or 8 months. Honestly, I don't think it sunk in until I sat in Berlin with Patrick Stewart, and that cross turned into an X, and that's when I feel I really let it go. I think I was a pain in the ass because it meant so much to me. It was 17 years, and I'd felt, Hutch and I, we talked about this 11 years ago, a version of this film like this. So like, I really believed, and I'm so grateful to the studio that they backed Jim's vision, and that we worked together. It meant so much to me that I couldn't really relax until I saw it. Yeah. And when I did, I was just so grateful. I remember saying to Jim, I will never, ever in a million years be able to tell you how grateful I am, because he delivered something way beyond what I could have.
It was not possible imagined. Without these people. Honestly, they're being very kind to me. But the truth is that it's really nice to have an idea and to want to pursue that idea, but you can get, as many of you I'm sure have found, it's hard to get somewhere without a lot of people behind you and on the sides of you and helping. And it's very kind. But it's also, he's a phenomenal actor, Hugh Jackman, it is a point of pride for me that I think that I got to co-write and direct him in this movie, because I think he is fucking fabulous in this movie, and reached unlike many on their final trip around the bases, reached deeper and hit it further than he ever had, and I think that's really amazing.
As I let you gentlemen go, we've talked many times the last couple of years leading into this. The retirement door is still firmly shut. You've had a couple months to think about it. You obviously went out in the way you wanted, as you just said. Like you couldn't have ended this run any better.
I see this movie and I think people want a musical. Maybe like that's what I'm thinking.
There's hope.
Maybe something like a circusy kind of feel. I don't know.
With claws.
Yeah, with claws.
This is. I mean, the funny thing is, this is one of your last interviews, probably about this franchise, about this character. So it's been a privilege to talk to you about it many times, including this time. And thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on the film, guys. Thank you for being here today, guys.
Thank you
for coming
out tonight.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
I want to just remind the audience here and around the country and watching on Facebook, you can download Logan right now on iTunes. And next week, May 23rd, you can get both the noir version and the original theatrical version on Blu-ray and 4K. Go check it out. Spread the good word. And again, thanks for stopping by today, guys. Thank you, gentlemen.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And all the audiences around the country, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.